a time when kingdoms rose from the earth like giants, their walls stretching high into the skies and their rulers wielding power over life and death, there was a king whose arrogance knew no bounds. He dismissed the warnings of the priests, laughed in the face of the oracle, and filled his coffers with gold stolen from sacred lands. He ordered the destruction of shrines to build monuments to his own glory, and turned away from the ancient laws that bound his people to the gods. Spirits were not silent. One night, as the air grew heavy with the scent of impending storm, the ground trembled beneath the king's palace. Lightning split the sky as a voice, older than memory, echoed through the land. The river that had once nourished the fields rose in fury, flooding the kingdom. Crops withered, sickness spread, and the once mighty king found himself powerless, abandoned by those he had ruled. Not merely a storm, but the hand of justice. The gods had spoken, and balance was restored. This is not just a tale to frighten children or entertain around evening fires. It is part of a vast tapestry of African mythology, where the gods are not distant deities but active forces of justice and order. In these stories, divine justice is not an abstract concept. It is a living force that punishes arrogance and protects the powerless. Kings and rulers, no matter how mighty, are held accountable not just to their people, but to the higher powers that govern existence itself. In this journey, we will uncover shocking tales of kings brought low by divine punishment, of greed and betrayal met with supernatural wrath, and even of rulers saved by repentance and the prayers of their people. These stories are not just ancient myths, but warnings that still echo today. In Africa, divine justice wasn't just a tale, it was a warning. Let's uncover the gods who punished kings and protected the people. In African spiritual traditions, justice is not simply about punishment or retribution. It is about maintaining cosmic balance. The universe, as understood through the lens of these ancient beliefs, is a web of interconnected relationships between humans, the natural world, the ancestors, and the gods. When this balance is disrupted, whether by individual greed, the arrogance of a ruler, or the violation of sacred laws, the entire community feels the repercussions. The gods and ancestors do not act out of malice or vengeance, but from a sacred duty to restore harmony. Their justice is not arbitrary, but rooted in the need to realign the spiritual and material worlds, to correct the distortions caused by human failings. It is a form of accountability that transcends the limitations of human legal systems, grounded in principles that prioritize the well-being of the collective over individual ambition. In this worldview, the gods and ancestors are ever watchful enforcers of justice. They are not passive observers, but active participants in the lives of the people. When a ruler becomes corrupt, disregards the wisdom of the elders, or exploits the land and its people, it is not uncommon for the gods to intervene directly. Sometimes their messages come in the form of omens or dreams, other times as natural disasters or personal misfortunes that escalate into public crises. The ancestors, too, are invoked as intermediaries, called upon through rituals and prayers to intercede when justice is needed. These spiritual forces ensure that those who hold power do not wield it without consequence, maintaining an equilibrium that reinforces the sacred interconnectedness of all things. Even kings, who stood at the pinnacle of earthly authority, were not beyond the reach of these higher powers. In African spirituality, leadership is a sacred trust, not a birthright of absolute control. A ruler who broke this trust, whether through arrogance, cruelty, or betrayal of communal values, risked invoking the wrath of the gods. Such rulers often found their fortunes reversed, their kingdoms crumbling under the weight of divine disapproval. Their downfall served as a powerful reminder to all that no one is above the law of the universe, a law maintained by the gods themselves. This belief in cosmic justice created a system of spiritual checks and balances, one where the ultimate accountability rested not in human courts, but in the ever-watchful eyes of the divine. In the rich tapestry of African mythology, stories abound of kings whose arrogance and disobedience led to their downfall at the hands of the gods. One such tale comes from Yoruba lore, where a king defied the warning of the oracle. The oracle, a respected voice of the divine, had cautioned the king against embarking on a war fueled by pride and greed. Blinded by ambition and the desire for conquest, the king ignored the prophecy. He launched his campaign, tearing through rival territories, pillaging sacred sites, and desecrating shrines. But the gods, angered by his defiance and disregard for cosmic balance, unleashed a series of calamities. First came a drought that withered the crops, then a pestilence that claimed both warriors and villagers alike. The king's army, once formidable, was decimated not by enemy swords but by unseen forces. As the kingdom crumbled, the people, desperate and afraid, turned back to the oracle, seeking guidance. Only through collective rituals and offerings were they able to restore favor with the gods, bringing rain and renewal. The king, stripped of power and respect, lived out his days in obscurity, a reminder of the price of ignoring divine counsel. Another tale speaks of a greedy ruler who sought to exploit the bountiful resources of a sacred river. This river was believed to be the dwelling place of Mawu-Lisa, the river goddess known for her beauty and her temper. The king, driven by an insatiable desire for wealth, ordered his men to divert the river to irrigate his private lands, disrupting the ecosystem and displacing entire communities. Mawu-Lisa, enraged by his actions, rose from the depths, her serpentine form towering above the waters. She unleashed a great flood, washing away the king's palaces and drowning his ill-gotten gains. Survivors spoke of seeing her shimmering figure in the moonlight, restoring the river's natural course. In the aftermath, the land flourished once more, but the king's legacy was forever tainted by his greed and the wrath of the goddess who defended the balance of nature. In the Ashanti tradition, there is a story of a king who betrayed the sacred laws that had long governed his people. This ruler, intoxicated by power, abolished the customs of honoring ancestors and respecting sacred sites. He declared himself above the gods, mocking the priests and silencing those who opposed him. But his hubris did not go unnoticed. Storms ravaged the kingdom, crops failed, and disease spread among the populace. One night, the king dreamt of a mighty lion, its mane alight with fire, delivering a message from the gods. His time had come. The next day, a rare and violent storm struck, toppling his palace and leaving him buried beneath its ruins. His people, once loyal, found renewed faith in the old ways, rebuilding their shrines and reviving the rituals that honored both gods and ancestors. The tale served as a stark warning that sacred laws, when broken, demand retribution, and that no human power is beyond the reach of divine justice. Not all stories of divine intervention end in total destruction. In one lesser-known legend, a king who had grown cruel and tyrannical was given a chance at redemption. His people, though oppressed, still held faith in the gods and believed in the power of communal prayers. As drought and famine threatened to consume the land, the elders gathered in secret, offering prayers and sacrifices to the gods, asking not for vengeance but for guidance. The gods, moved by the sincerity of the people, sent dreams to the king, visions of his misdeeds and the suffering he had caused. Stricken with guilt and fear, the king publicly confessed his wrongs and begged for forgiveness. The rains returned, the crops grew lush, and harmony was restored. This story is a powerful testament that justice, while firm, can also be merciful when met with true repentance and communal resilience. These stories, woven into the cultural fabric of Africa, remind us that divine justice is not a myth, but a living force that shapes the destiny of rulers and the fate of nations. Throughout the stories of divine justice in African mythology, certain symbols appear repeatedly, each carrying deep layers of meaning that resonate across generations. Rivers, for example, are more than physical bodies of water. They are living entities that represent life, sustenance, and the sacred balance of nature. When kings or rulers disrupted the flow of rivers through greed or arrogance, they were not just meddling with geography, but challenging the spiritual order. The rivers in these stories respond not with passive resistance, but with floods and torrents, reclaiming their paths and purifying the land of corruption. Storms, too, are powerful symbols, manifestations of divine wrath and cleansing. They tear through the physical world, breaking down false structures of power and forcing communities to reckon with their failings. In these tempests, the message is clear: no human authority can withstand the forces of justice unleashed by the gods. Animals, often messengers or avatars of the divine, carry messages of warning or judgment. The lion in the Ashanti tale is not just a beast, but a fiery embodiment of divine anger and a call for repentance. Serpents, birds, and other creatures appear throughout these myths as intermediaries between the spiritual and material realms, their actions symbolizing the gods' response to human behavior. They remind us that the natural world is not separate from the divine, but an extension of it, a conduit through which justice is delivered. These ancient stories, while rooted in myth, speak profoundly to modern struggles. They mirror contemporary battles against corruption, environmental destruction, and social injustice. The rulers in these tales, driven by greed, arrogance, and disregard for their people, reflect the failings of many leaders today. The floods and storms that restore balance echo current concerns over environmental collapse caused by exploitation and neglect. The communal prayers and sacrifices that save the repentant king resonate with the power of collective action in confronting injustice. At their core, these stories are not just about the past. They are cautionary tales and guides for the present. They remind us that true justice is not blind, but deeply aware of the interconnectedness of all things. They call for humility in leadership, protection of the powerless, and reverence for the forces that sustain life itself. Through these myths, the gods continue to whisper lessons that remain as urgent and relevant today as they were centuries ago. As we journey back through these powerful stories, we are reminded that divine justice is not a distant idea, but a living force woven into the very fabric of African spirituality. We saw the king who defied the oracle, ignoring sacred warnings and losing everything. We witnessed the greedy ruler who dared to disrupt the sacred river and felt the wrath of Mami-Wata. We heard the tale of the Ashanti king whose betrayal of sacred laws led to storms that swept his kingdom into ruin. And we glimpsed hope in the story of a ruler who, through genuine repentance and the prayers of his people, was spared and taught the true meaning of humility and justice. These stories are not just ancient fables, but living lessons that speak to power, accountability, and the resilience of communities. The gods are not gone. They still whisper through our stories, reminding us that justice is never blind. Will you listen? Their voices echo in the rustling of trees, in the thunder of storms, in the steady flow of rivers that have seen generations rise and fall. They are not relics of the past, but forces of balance, protectors of the weak, and guardians of truth. Their lessons remain vital today as we face challenges of corruption, environmental collapse, and the abuse of power. The gods call us not to fear them, but to remember them, to walk with humility, and to honor the sacred balance they uphold. If this story has stirred something within you, don't let it end here. Share this video with your family, your friends, your community. Comment below with your favorite story and the lessons you've taken from it. Subscribe to this channel to join this journey into Africa's forgotten legends. Let us listen to the gods' whispers, learn from the past, and walk forward with reverence and courage. The stories are not just theirs, they are ours, and it is up to us to keep them alive.